the Honorable Board of Examiners, the Honorable my thesis supervisor, Professor Samsubar Saleh. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present my undergraduate thesis with the title Rice Demand Analysis of Indonesian Households, Application of Quadratic Almost Ideal Demand System Model. My name is Veronica Swasti Paramitha Putri, and this is my presentation. Chapter 1, Part 1, Research Background. Rice is the most commonly consumed staple for human population, especially among the Asian countries. Figure 1.1 shows that 9 out of 10 top rice-producing countries are located in Asia. Collectively, the top 5 countries, with China as the biggest, followed by India, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, contribute around 72% of the world's total annual rice production. Some high Asian economies, such as Hong Kong, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, have gone through a substantial decrease in individual rice intake over the past 3 decades. But it is naive to assume that all Asian countries would behave the same way. However, the Global Rice Science Partnership predicts that the rice diversification rate in several emerging Asian countries has begun to decrease at slower pace. Indonesia plays the 3rd rank of top rice-producing country in the world. However, it is also one of the world's biggest rice importer due to its overconsumption. Indonesian rice dependency increases as the population grows, but the expansion of paddy field is hindered by the conversion of arable land for any other industrial purposes and housing areas. If the rice consumption does not show any declining trend, the International Rice Research Institute predicts that Indonesia will require 38% more rice in the next 25 years. With the continuance of population growth and the lack of production, it is possible for Indonesia to suffer from rice shortage in the future. To avoid such problem, this study aims to provide some possible instrument to control the rice demand of Indonesian societies. Chapter 1, Part 2, Research Objective. Although the majority of food demand analysis is influenced by income and price factors, Huang and Boa argue that the other structural factors can also affect people's consumption behavior. Therefore, this research aims to examine whether income expenditure level, price of other goods, demographic and geographic variables will significantly affect the Indonesian household's rice consumption pattern. Here are some limitations regarding the scope of the study. Chapter 2, Theoretical Framework and Hypothesis Development. Casali considered income as one of the most important determinants influencing the household's food consumption pattern. The Angus Law also stated that the poorer families tend to have large budget share on nourishment. Those findings are aligned with the Bennett's Law, whereby households tend to move their diet away from cheap to more expensive food as income rises. This study intends to examine the first hypothesis. Consumers' buying decisions are greatly affected by how they perceive the selling price. Kotler and Keller argue that the price perception may project the value of the product and also their quality. Therefore, price is a crucial determinant in the consumer's purchasing decisions. This study intends to examine the second hypothesis. Some economists have mostly examined the effect of economic variables on society's dietary pattern. However, Ray found that the household consumption basket can also be significantly influenced by other non-economic factors. By focusing the observation on 4 demographic variables, household size, age, gender, and also the education level of the household heads, this study intends to examine the third hypothesis. Urbanization has proved to be significantly changed the dietary pattern of societies. Tomlins argued that the consumers who live in urban areas generally purchase less amount of rice, but in higher quality. The study by Yunita and Rizwani also found that the expenditure on rice in rural households tend to increase with the rising income, while the urban households tend to decrease with the rising income. By considering geographic factors, this study intends to examine the fourth hypothesis. Chapter 3, Research Methodology. Based on the research model, the dependent variable is the household rice expenditure, while the price index of food and non-food items, household monthly income expenditure, demographic and geographic factors are regarded as independent variables. The food category are divided into 3 subcategories: the staple, basic, and complementary food. The quadratic almost ideal demand system is captured by y-square, or the quadratic form of income expenditure level in the model. By using higher order of expenditure in the quadratic form, banks argue that the regression model will automatically omit the linearity assumption of the Angus curve. Using the IFLS way for survey data on household level, this research collects both quantitative and qualitative data. The quantitative data are gathered using the Household Per Capita Expenditure or PCE, while the qualitative data are gathered using the IFLS Wave 4, Book K, Module AR to collect information regarding the demographic characteristics, and Module SC to collect information regarding the geographic characteristics of the respondents. Using SPSS as the data analyzing tool, this study applies the cross-sectional study with survey instrument that has been previously conducted nationally by the Indonesia Family Life Survey. The IFLS National Survey represents about 83% of the Indonesian populations. There are 13,536 households being interviewed in the survey. This study applies descriptive analysis, correlation analysis using the Pearson's correlation, classical assumption test of multicollinearity and normality, and also the regression analysis to conduct the statistical testing. Chapter 4, Part 1. The Descriptive Analysis. This slide shows the maturity of the respondent's profile. The mean comparison using the gender-based analysis. This table shows that for both male and female-headed households do not significantly differ in household size. In terms of age and education level, the female-headed households tend to be headed by a person who is older and has lower education compared to the male-headed households. The expenditure share for food is higher among the male-headed households, while the female-headed households have higher expenditure share on non-food items. This table also shows that the male-headed households have higher monthly expenditure level than the female-headed households. Next, the mean comparison using the location-based analysis. This study observes no significant difference in household size on both location categories. However, in terms of age and education, urban households tend to be headed by a younger and more educated person. This table also shows that the rural households have higher expenditure share on food items, while the urban households have higher expenditure share on non-food items. Furthermore, this study observes a significant disparity in total monthly expenditure between two location categories. Finally, the mean comparison using the income-based analysis. This study observes that the high-income households tend to have larger household size and are headed by a person who enrolled in a higher education level. Low-income households have the largest proportion of expenditure share in terms of rice and staple food, and also place the highest in terms of total food expenditure share. In contrast, the high-income households have the highest expenditure share on non-food items compared to the other income categories. The correlation analysis in this table shows that the majority of the variables show significant correlation at 0.01 level. However, some results within the red circles indicate no significant correlation between two variables, and some even show no correlation at all. Classical assumption test, the test of multicollinearity. This test is conducted to check whether or not there is any correlation among independent variables within the regression model. The model is said to be absent from multicollinearity if the variance inflation factor or VIF is less than 10 or the tolerance value is more than 0.1. This table proves that the regression model stated in the study has no multicollinearity because the VIF are less than 10 and the tolerance value are more than 0.1. Classical assumption test, the test of normality. Using the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test of normality, this study shows that the significant values of all variables are lower than 5%, indicating statistically significant test result, which by default leads to the rejection of the null hypothesis. Assumptions of normality are hardly attainable in practice. Therefore, the application of central limit theorem could be useful, whereby the distribution tends towards normal as the sample size increases. Thus, by having a sufficiently large sample size, the sample mean in this study will have an approximately normal distribution, which can be shown by the bell-shaped histogram in this slide. Chapter 4, Part 2. The simple linear regression and hypothesis testing. In this section, I will going to present the regression results and draw a conclusion based on four main hypotheses that has been mentioned earlier in Chapter 2. This table shows that the household monthly income expenditure has a positive beta coefficient and a significant level of 0.000, which falls below alpha of 5%. The adjusted R-square also shows that the household monthly income expenditure is positively related to the household rice consumption by 16.7%. Therefore, the regression analysis observes that there is a positive and significant relationship between the household income expenditure level and household monthly rice consumption. Hypothesis 1 is accepted. Table 4.9 shows that the price of other goods in both categories have positive coefficients and significance level of 0.000, indicating a highly significant relationship towards the dependent variable. The adjusted R-square also shows that the price of other goods is positively related to the household rice consumption by 42.5%. Therefore, the regression analysis concludes that there is a positive and significant relationship between the price of other goods and the household monthly rice consumption. Hypothesis 2 is accepted. The adjusted R-square in this table indicates that the demographic variables are positively related to the household rice consumption by 17.3%. The simple linear regression shows positive coefficients for the household size, the age of household head, and also the years of education, and negative coefficients for the gender of the household head. Nevertheless, the significance values of those demographic variables are shown to be significant since it falls below 0.05. Therefore, we may conclude that there is a significant relationship between demographic variables and the household monthly rice consumption. Hypothesis 3 is accepted. The adjusted R-square also shows that the geographic factors are positively related with the household rice consumption by 3%. Therefore, by having a positive coefficient and a significance value of 0.000, we may conclude that there is a positive and significant relationship between the geographic factors and the household monthly rice consumption. Hypothesis 4 is accepted. Chapter 4, Part 3. The multiple linear regression. This analysis is applied to model the relationship between dependent and independent variables for both simultaneously using f-test and also partially using t-test. The adjusted R-square for this regression model is 0.843, indicating that 84.3% of the monthly rice consumption can be explained by the independent variables, while the rest 15.3% is explained by other variables aside from what I mentioned in this study. This study applies the f-test using analysis of variance and found that the significance level is 0.000, indicating a significant relationship between dependent and independent variables. Therefore, we may conclude that the household income expenditure level, price of other goods, demographic and geographic variables are simultaneously significant, influencing the household rice consumption demand. However, when the multiple linear regression analysis is conducted to the partial t-test, only some independent variables show significant values. This table shows that the majority of the independent variables have significance level of 0.000, except for the age and gender of the household head. Therefore, based on the partial t-test analysis, we may conclude that only some variables are partially significant, influencing the Indonesian household monthly rice consumption, namely household income expenditure level, price of other goods, household size, education of the household head, and also the geographic factors. Chapter 5, Conclusions. With the acceptance of all hypotheses, this study concludes that income level, price of other goods, the demographic and also geographic factors are significantly influencing the Indonesian household's rice consumption. The price of staple food and non-food items are found to be positive and significantly influence the household's rice consumption, while the price of basic and complementary food categories are found to be negative but significantly influence the household's rice consumption. The t-test analysis also found that out of 4 demographic variables, only household size and education of household head have positive and significant influences towards the household's rice consumption. This study also proved that geographic factors do significantly affect the household rice consumption behavior, whereby people in urban households tend to consume less rice compared to the rural households. And finally, in terms of income expenditure level, this study found that it is positive and significantly influencing the household rice consumption. However, when the quadratic form is imposed, this study found that income has negative and significant impact towards the household's rice consumption. Aside from some limitations mentioned earlier in this presentation, this study suggests 2 possible future research. By adding some other demographic variables, further studies may provide better understanding on the dietary pattern of Indonesian households. Moreover, by using panel data, further studies might be able to understand the change of households' consumption behavior in response to some socioeconomic changes across time. The Indonesian rice overconsumption and lack of production inevitably leads to the possible rice problems in the future. This study offers some policy instrument to control the Indonesian rice from both consumption and production side. First, Indonesian government should promote other alternative sources of carbs such as yam, arrowroot, cassava, corn, and sagu to reduce Indonesian rice dependency. Second, this study has proved that people living in urban households tend to consume less rice than those who lived in rural areas. By imposing urbanization program, it is possible for Indonesian government to decrease society's rice consumption. Third, This study found that the size of household has positive and significant impact towards the consumption of rice. Therefore, by imposing the family planning program, the Indonesian government can both control the population growth and also avoid the possible overconsumption of food commodities. Fourth, by stimulating the agricultural technology innovation, government will encourage farmers to increase their productivity and lead to higher standard of rice grains quality. Finally, the lack of harvested areas must be compensated by the creation of high-yield rice varieties. Therefore, every hectare of rice field production can be optimized to attain stable Indonesian rice supply. We have come to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a great day.